Welcome to this special MGIA annual 2026 conference podcast. Our conference theme this year is Specialty Insurance Designed to Succeed. And today we have some fantastic guests to share their views on the specialty market. So without any further ado, let's get into some introductions. So Joel, if I can come to you first.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Joel Markham. I'm director of AXA UK's delegated authority business, where we trade with MGAs across the UK and been proud sponsors of the MGA for the last 3 years.
Thank you, Joel. And Graham?
Hi, everybody. Mike, my first time on the podcast, so thank you very much for inviting me to join. I'm Graham
Very
Clark,
welcome.
Thank you. Graham Clark, Commercial Director at Geo Underwriting. I'm sure lots of our listeners are familiar with Geo, but for those that aren't, we're a specialist MGA owned by the Ardonna Group and part of the group's UK platform. Everywhen, but Geo is a separate regulated and legal entity with its own board structure, so very much operate as a standalone MGA, but enjoy the benefits of being part of a bigger group. Real breadth of underwriting capability at Geo, and we focus on a number of specialist sectors, from agriculture, marine, construction and renovation through to non-standard property and casualty insurance.
Thanks very much, Graham. And say very welcome to your first podcast. And last but never least, Gav.
Yeah, I'm Gavin Peters. Should also say long-time listener, first-time caller, friend of the show. So yeah, delighted to be here as well. I'm Chief Growth Officer at Genesis. If you don't know us, Genesis is an insurance administration software provider. We work with insurers, MGAs, and brokers to take the pain out of administration and modernize processes.
Thanks very much. So absolutely great cross-section from our sector with their own insight and their own views. So really looking to talk to you around a number of different themes. So that's the first one. So specialty market. So if I could come to you first, Joel, from a carrier perspective. So, how do you rate the sort of health of the specialty market currently, certainly with soft market conditions as a headwind?
Yeah, it's an interesting place to start, I think. We tend to only write specialty business through our MGA partners. So actually, it's a very much a singular distribution lens kind of answer for us currently. You're right. Soft market is doing what it always does, and I think one of the things we've definitely seen is more capacity come in. We're keeping a watchful eye on that in terms of what that means. But I think what I would say is it's also challenging existing capacity to really strengthen some of those relationships that we've got and make sure that we're ready for the next few years. We've definitely looked at how do we do more with our friends. So we've launched some new product sectors as well, just to try and make sure that we are, with the saying that the MGA have got around designed to succeed. That's what we're trying to make sure we're doing with our partners too. So I think it's a very dynamic marketplace with lots of products kind of performing in different ways. So for us, it's around how do you manage the portfolio, how do you keep your partners happy, and how do you make sure you keep an eye on what's just around the corner in terms of the potential hard market that everyone keeps telling me might be about to turn up sometime soon. But I'm not so sure if I'm honest at the moment in time.
Interesting. So, Graham, if I could come to you next, obviously, you under Geo deal with a number of sort of different carriers for your product suite. You arguably are closer to distribution, which we'll come on to. So, how do you rate the sort of the specialty market and its current health?
Yeah, I think as a general comment, mate, I think the market is in a reasonable place. I still think potential returns remain attractive. I think the very nature of the changing risk landscape is in itself, creating new opportunities for the market. As you know, brokers and clients face new risks that they're looking to understand and protect themselves against. But, as Joe said, the market, rightly continues to grapple with some of the headwinds and the pressures of the market cycle. Alongside, a lot of wider economic uncertainty and challenging geopolitical environment, really. So I think that is in itself exacerbating some of the issues across the supply chain and driving challenges in the claims sphere. I think regardless of market conditions, what really holds true for MGAs is that they will and can continue to be successful where they are designing and building products really that respond to broker and client needs as that risk landscape evolves, and where MGAs are really working strategically to build mutually meaningful and significant relationships with their insurer partners to underwrite, for long-term success. And absolutely crucial to that is understanding one another's business models, objectives, and developing a real trust to help build that true long-term partnership model.
Yeah, yeah. And Gavin, if I could come to you, because you've got a real unique sort of insight dealing with carriers, MGAs, and the brokers, and as I said, we'll touch on distribution. So when you look at when you're dealing with all those sort of different partners, and obviously in the specialty sort of area, what are you seeing in terms of any particular tensions sort of on that side?
Yeah, and I think clearly the market has softened, and that's the trend we're now in after a longer hard market cycle than we've had previously. But I think obviously within that, people are acting very differently. It's not just one market. It's not one size fits all. Different insurers, brokers, and J's are acting very differently. I think within that, I think it's sort of diverging a little bit. So I don't think there's an overall pattern you can pin behaviours on that maybe you could more previously. Before, as Graham said, there was such instability, geopolitical change, technological change. And I think one of the things that we're seeing is a sort of shift back and forth. As technology changes and new risks emerge, you're seeing people react quite quickly to that. And I guess I'd be keen on Joel and Graham's insight, with Joel saying not seeing any sort of shift back to a harder market as yet. One of the things that we think, or I think, might happen is those cycles might get smaller. A new cyber risk emerging can cause everyone to completely change their behavior and could toughen up the market quite quickly. It's only a couple of weeks ago or a few weeks ago that Anthropic were talking about releasing a new AI model that could blow all previous cyber risks out of the water. And when that happens, I think you'll see insurers react differently to that, and that can completely change things. So I think we're entering a period through technology which is changing all previous kind of models and predictions and speeding things up so much that I think, yes, we're in a softer market. I think people are acting very differently within that market. There's not a one size
Right.
fits all. But I think it's going to change quickly. I think it could go back. So keen to hear the other thoughts on that. But I don't think it's as stable as it has been previously.
You guys want to pick up on Gavin's observations? Quite insightful on that.
From an insurer perspective, I think the your comment on the Anthropic situations, I think, is quite interesting, actually, in terms of the unknowns that technology is bringing to the insurance landscape, not just for MJ's capacity technology providers, but also our customers, right? And fundamentally, that's what we're all here for. I do think it does pose potentials for cycles to evolve. I also think one of the thing with cyber risk is it's agnostic to indemnity products of old, right? If you're a property policy can still have cyber exposure on it in various parts. An agricultural business can still have cyber exposure to it in parts. So I think one of the things that's definitely changing is insurance needs of customers and products will probably have to look slightly different in the future, because I do think technology is
Yeah.
changing. I wouldn't say silo is the wrong word, and that's definitely the word I'm looking for, but I can't think of a better one. Kind of like verticals of that's a property risk, that's a casualty risk, that's a special. I think that's going to get more and more blurred as technology for our customers and the world that we live in evolves. And frankly, there's no better place than the MGA sector to stay fleet of foot and evolve. And MJs have always been at the forefront of that evolution, right? And trying to get to customers' needs quicker than insurers can themselves. So yes, I think it will pose some things we've got to get our heads around. Conversely, some great opportunity underlying some of that, I would have thought, for MGAs and capacity providers if they can get their head around some of it too.
Graham, just pivoting back before I sort of perhaps move on to distribution, given that your sort of broad products suite, do you feel obviously diversification helps in any sort of market conditions, but do you feel the more specialist you are, the more insulated you are from market rate trends, or do you feel if you are more specialist, then there's the danger that becomes overcapacity, and therefore actually it's even worse from a position? What's your experience on that?
Yeah, I think so. There are undeniable benefits of diversification, no doubt. Um, Different parts of the economy, different clients in different sectors are probably exposed to different trends at different times and in different ways, and that undoubtedly has a knock-on effect on the insurance purchasing process. Um, I would say the products, even in a really specialist vertical, the products of the past that have been designed and built to serve customers operating within that segment still will need to continue to evolve as the risks and issues that those customers are facing also change due to diversification of the business activities that they're undertaking as a sort of example. So I think, to echo some of the comments that the guys have made, really the MGA sector, which historically has always been really good at being agile, nimble, and responding to those customer needs as they've changed. I think it leaves us in a really strong position as a sector to move with our clients as their risk profile continues to change and evolve.
Mm, yeah,
Mike, can I add? I think I
sure.
think so. I agree with a lot of what Graham just said, and I think if I could jump on the specific, I think in your question as well as I we are definitely seeing some monoline specialty MGAs be completely insulated from some of the market conditions right now. Um, Challenge is they might be insulated from the ones now, but that doesn't mean that they might be insulated. Well, and they might have the next cycle, right? Especially as people look at, well, it's going to be difficult because of claims inflationary pressures in certain lines. Where could we go and get better guarantees? But we are definitely seeing. We did a really manual task, which we should have done an AI before you even caught me out on it, right? But we downloaded the MGAA membership and worked out how many people that we dealt with, and we deal with 28 members of the MGAA, which I'm really proud of. Some of them are generalists, but actually those that are specialists are fighting a slightly different fight right now. And that is more around how do you scale some of those specialty sectors? How do you make customers interested in wanting to buy policies that they right now, given all this social econ, they might not be able to afford, even though it's probably the stuff that they want. And then how do you educate the brokers that it's also something that they need to understand to be able to sell to? I think it's really I know I've kind of jumped on the question, but I do think there is some protection for some of those specialties. It's just whether how fast and how big can you scale them, and how interested are customers in buying some of those products.
Yeah, I think
There's
it's a good point, and I think it's well made, because I think, as you've alluded to, you could have a hard market, but there could be one specialty product which is actually going through a soft market, even though the rest of the
Yeah.
market is actually a tailwind of rate and increases. So it's just I suppose the dynamics of how we operate. So Gavin, if I moving just to distribution, and I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, were at BIBA in Manchester, which I think over 10,000 sort of delegates were there. So when we look at distribution and we look at, the broking community, and obviously you have broker clients, do you see, brokers gravitating more to specialty products for their customers in those segments, or do you still see them in the main being, very good generalist brokers, having different sectors? I recognize that the size of the broker will change
yeah.
that, but what's your sense in terms of the broker clients you deal with?
I think there has to be some form of specialism, even if it's not specialist in the insurance term, in terms of a specialist line of business. Um, there's a difference between diversification and generalization. I think anyone who's just being generalist nowadays hasn't really got much of a future. Things diverging, things are getting more complex. I think if you're just trying to be all things to all people, you're going to really struggle. That doesn't mean you need to just go in all in on one line of business and be a complete expert in that and only known for that one thing. There's clearly economies of scale, and as Graham and Joel said, by diversifying, you can reduce risks across different lines. As you said, Mike, some markets can be hard and one product line can be soft within that. So diversifying is important. But I don't think that's same as generalist. And I don't see the generalist model being the future, because you kind of have to stand for something. It's more competitive than ever. Things are more complex than ever. It could be a marketing strategy. It could be a brand thing. You know, I'm from a marketing background, and what strikes me is you might see more consumer brands like Coca-Cola talk about trust than you might see brokers talking about it, you know, building their brand in that way. You know, why do you need to trust a can of Coke? But they put a lot of money and time into that, whereas a broker would just be talking about the general product. You know, they've got to build that brand out. So having that brand value, but around a particular theme or thread, could be the answer beyond just going down certain lines of business. But within any business, I think you need those to be a broker. You need that specialist experience. So I think you can diversify. You can have those individual units, but the risks are getting so complex that you do need to build out. I think retain those specialisms. I don't see the pure generalist trying to just add more and more lines, just do more and more for a particular market without really standing for anything particularly as expertise or a value is any way
Yeah,
forward. So certainly seeing that divergence.
that's interesting. And Graham, obviously, close to your sort of distribution model, sort of as Geo, and obviously you have some specialist sort of niche products. You'd have a good sort of overview in terms of, what type of brokers are you're engaging and you're trading with, and are you seeing that actually even sort of condensing more into a specialist sort of distribution nature, or what's your sense?
Well, look, mate, you touched on Biba, so look, I'll start by saying congratulations to the to the whole team at Biba, really, for putting on a fantastic conference this year. I think the energy, across the week was terrific, and I think really demonstrates the value of the insurance community and the network. We at Geo had a really strong presence and managed to meet a lot of partners. Fantastic conference. Um, to the question specifically, I'm not sure there's a one size fits all trend. I think some brokers will naturally lean into specialist areas where they believe they already have or can build a competitive advantage. I think others will naturally remain more generalist. What I would say is, and we've touched on it a little bit already, is that in a world where risk is continuing to evolve and become more nuanced, more complex, I think successful brokers will continue to differentiate themselves really on the quality of the advice that they're able to provide to their clients. And like at Geo, we work with a broad range of brokers, and it's those brokers who really help articulate the challenges and the risks that their clients are facing. And really, it's that broker, MGA, insurer feedback loop that helps us design, build, and distribute products that really are better suited to meet the needs of those clients. And I think even where a broker is less specialist and perhaps is uh, more generalist in their nature, partnering with a specialist MGA like Geo and others can help give those brokers the confidence really to attract and retain clients in markets or sectors or areas where actually they've got a little bit less experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that. And Joel, your sort of area, quite significant size includes MGAs as you've referenced, but also brokers with binders, effectively. What's your sense when you look at your portfolio and that broker contingent where they've got a delegated authority from yourself as opposed to being a virtual insurer? Are you seeing that move to differentiation and more specialism, or more still more rounded in terms of offering?
So I'm going to sit on the fence and get splinters. It's probably a little bit of both, right? But as has always been the way, I wrote down whilst Gavin and Graham were talking. I was like, it's no different than it's ever been, is it? Really? Like brokers evolve. Some are generalists, some are specialists. I think in the London space, there's a bit more diversity. But last week I spent a lot of time with some of our community and premier partners in AXA, and they're in their communities, they're deep entrenched in their customer businesses. They're not talking about becoming specialists, they're talking about getting closer to their customers and understanding their needs. And then I agree with Graham, then they might need an MGA that specializes in a specific sector to give them the right product and to help them give the advice. So it's kind of always been I know it's a little, not trying to be controversial, it's kind of always the way it's been, right? The insurance industry is great for this evolution and change. The one thing I would say is, and we are lucky, we have well over 200 binders in our business, 200 partnerships. I would say that brokers are holding their own in terms of coming up with new ideas, trying to answer slightly different questions. What I would see in the MGA space, though, is that they are working just as hard to stay ahead. And you only need to look at some of the teams that have been acquired by MGAs, or the product sectors that have been launched into in the last kind of 6 to 12 months, to see that they are really trying to stay ahead. And we, this isn't about promoting AXA too much, but we've run a emerging risks for customers report globally for the last few years. We talked a lot about cyber today. Climate change is the single biggest risk that any of our customers have got, and I think ESG got boxed up a little bit as a corporate tick for box. Actually, it's a real live threat for some of our customers, and that's where I'm starting to see not only MJs but brokers starting to go, actually, how can we help? And is there an opportunity to specialize in decommissioning bonds for solar farms? Is there a way to specialize in renewable energy or anaerobic digestion? They're very different questions from a few years ago, when people were kind of talking around how do we consolidate books of business? How do I try and compete on SME classes? So I think we are being asked different questions now. And I think, with respect to all of the other insurers out there, having a sizable book of business allows us to do a bit of R&D and test and dip a toe into some of these things,
Yeah,
knowing that we're not going
yeah,
to come
yeah.
out of them again in 3, 6, 12 months, because that's not our model. So I think it's be really interesting to see what the conversation is at the next conference, if I'm honest, Mike, in terms of what the next 12 months look like. And that's not asking for the three of us to come back. I just think there's a real shift at the moment around what customers need, and is the geopolitical landscape actually not letting them get to it?
Yeah, I think if I take away from what all three of your sort of observations, I think what is very encouraging is the obviously endorsement of brokers still being very agile, very innovative, and very adapting to changing customer needs. And I think that's always been a fantastic strength of brokers in terms of doing that. I think brokers quite rightly could observe that they are always perhaps ahead of the curve on behalf of their customers, and other stakeholders are slightly slower to react. But I think in a way that's where MGAs, as Graham alluded to, have really filled that gap, because they look to match the innovation, the agility of brokers and their customers. So I think that's a real plus point. But I think it's really encouraging that despite sort of challenging market conditions for everyone in the sector, and let's be clear, as we know, brokers have to deal direct with the end customer who's paying the premium. That we're not losing that innovation and that ability to react and deliver sort of great customer outcomes. So a good tick in the box, for our broker colleagues, without a doubt. So look, I want to come to you, Gavin, if I may, because I suspect you're the expert in this next theme amongst our panel, and that's no disrespect to the other guys on the panel, but if we take a step back and look at let's look at the stakeholders, carriers, brokers, and MGAs, and the critical sort of role technology, stroke, and dare I say it, AI will be playing over the next sort of 12 to 18, 24 months. Through your expert lens, what would you see would be the real sort of changes? So if we dump the myth and the sort of, smokes and mirrors, and get it from an expert, what do you really see will change and impact us in the next, say, 12 to 18 months?
I think we are now seeing the step change that everyone's talked about for years in terms of what technology can do and how it can impact both, the insurer business side and the end customer. Um, I've been in this industry, for this business, in insurance admin software for 5 years. And for the first three and a half of those, or four of those, it was pretty much the same story that it probably been for the 10 years before that, about legacy technology, still trying to get everyone off legacy technology onto cloud-based technology, trying to get modern APIs together. And, just this cycle, if it's really complex, it's really hard to put these programs together for a lot of big businesses that have got big, complex legacy systems. And that conversation isn't going away. But what I think is changing is just the speed of development now for modern software platforms. And you can't avoid talking about AI. It's what's driving it, and it's what can continue to drive the change. But the way in the last 6 months writing code has changed and put it in the power of the hands of people who aren't even trained coders, that you can now get, AI software to write that code for you. You can develop tools, you can, the expert providers are rolling out new features all the time. So I think, what on the one hand, providers like ourselves will just be updating software and releasing new features at a rate of knots. It'll only move as fast as kind of like the slowest moving part. So if the customers aren't ready for it, then there's no point releasing it. And no matter how much AI you put in your business, there's always going to be human in the loop stuff. So that's what's going to control that cadence. But I think you're going to see those features rolling out far more quickly. Like, it has to. It's what's going to happen now. I think that's going to change how businesses are going to engage with software. It's been a number of years that people have bought software licenses rather than bought, one-off cost implementations for
Yeah,
technology. They've been paying
yeah.
licenses. Some sort of like, what am I paying a license for? It's the same software. I used to buy this as a one-off. Now I pay it monthly. But that's just going to change. Like, you'll know why you're buying the license, because you're going to keep getting releases. So you're going to pay the license for the fact this is evolving technology now. I think you'll see that a lot more in the next 18 months, where people will see those releases come more quickly. And, from 1 month to the next, you'll get a new feature. That's what you'll get. And people will be learning how to sort of keep up with that, but then also they come to expect it. So that's going to change. And then I think the final thing is customer driven. We're all people that don't just engage in insurance. We use other software. What we see elsewhere, we're going to expect in our own businesses. So, like, just an example, the other day, I was signing a contract on DocuSign, got the contract through, and the first thing that popped up was an AI, embedded AI. Would you like me to summarize the contract for you? And yeah, of course I would. Great. Just tell me what's in there as a kind of top line. 2 months ago, I would have gone, wow, that's incredible. Like, I haven't got to read every line. It's going to summarize it for me. And now I go, yeah, of course I would. Yep, do that for me. And it's just become the norm. So now we're all expecting that. We're seeing it more and more. So we'll expect that off of, but someone buying insurance is going to expect that from their broker when they're giving them a policy. You're like, well, where's the little embedded AI widget? It's going to summarize it for me. I don't want to read a 30-page contract, that sort of thing. So I think society's changing. People are changing. They're gonna change their expectations, and I think, yeah, it's exciting time. And the next 18 months are going to be, I think, they're going to be a big change. Obviously, it's only as fast as people can move and business can react, but I think there will be a way faster cadence than there has been over the previous 5, 10 years, whatever. So I think it'll be very different.
And just before I go to the other guys, when you talk about, they can only move as the sort of, the fastest sort of link or the slowest link in the chain, rather. Do you see the opportunities for, let's say, let's take carriers. So those carriers who've got perhaps more clean IT stacks, perhaps, maybe the more agile and nimble carriers who will be able to embrace that and have a competitive advantage. And I'm sure Joel will have some observations, but some of the very large insurers, through my own experience, they've got enormous IT budgets. They've got enormous pressure on prioritizing what they do across the whole business, and sometimes that can be a big advantage, but can also be less of an advantage in terms of the nimble movers. So,
I
so do you feel that would be a competitive advantage for those who can embrace it quicker in terms of underwriting earnings?
Without a doubt. The more agile the business, the more you're going to see that, make a difference now than you would have. You've seen it in the past, but it's certainly gonna multiply going forwards. I think we touched on it earlier a little bit. We talked about the kind of the consolidation of the market and mergers and acquisitions, and yes, that can give way more scale, but to the point about being the slowest link in the chain will be what drives the overall speed. That can obviously add complexity to businesses. So you
Yeah.
can become this big behemoth that is now very slow because you've got lots of technologies taped together and lots of business units taped together. So I think you're going to have to see the larger groups get infrastructure in place to move quickly, which might be a little breakaway innovation hub that starts leading from the front and others can catch up, or it might be a complete overhaul. But certainly the ones who are entering the market are cloud native, the AI native, they've got a great head start in that sense. So it's up to the others to try and keep pace with that. Because, I think in the past, you could nullify that threat by the scale on the offsite of, okay, well, I'm not as fast moving, but look at the size of my business. I can just trade off of that. I think that the speed is going to get so quick that won't be the right offset anymore. So you're going to need the speed as well as the size and the scale.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Joe, what's your sense? You're in a very, very large organization. Obviously, no doubt, lots
Yeah.
of pressures, a lot of demands on IT capability, budgets, and everything else, and execution. How can you sort of, in your world, sort of remain nimble and agile and embrace the sort of things Gav has sort of shared?
Isn't this when I just say, "Isn't Gav the expert?" So I agree with everything. No, I'm just
Yeah, well, that's not true. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so I actually sit on the board for a software tech company, so I probably have two lenses on it. It's not one of our partners on the school, so I won't name them. That's not fair, but I think I probably have two lenses on it. So one, totally agree with everything that Gavin said. What was happening last week, it's I think out of date compared to what we were doing 6, 12, 18 months ago. I also think I was probably aware of this, but with the exposure that I've had recently, I think what I've realized is everyone in insurances, we've kind of kidded ourselves that our data is really complicated and all our processes are really complicated. You speak to someone who's not been in insurance and they go, it's not really that complicated. I don't know why you've kidded yourselves. It's so complicated. I think it's been quite eye-opening. But in terms of kind of, the position I have within,
Sorry, Joel, did you say we've been dining out on that for 15 years?
probably,
Don't
let's be
offer
honest, Mike, we've all been dining out for a lot longer. But it's been quite eye-opening. I think then it allows you to start asking yourselves slightly different questions. I think, Gavin, you mentioned in one of your answers around the cloud-based, right? When cloud came along, everyone said, that's going to revolution everything. We're going to get everything off-site. And then most companies, if you're a big corporate company, what became one of your single largest expenses was your cost for cloud. So you might have done one thing, but you've inadvertently created a number elsewhere on a balance sheet, a P&L account. And we look at AI in AXA, I think, probably in a couple of ways. So one, how do I just allow my underwriters to do the job that they want to do by getting rid of some of the really repetitive tasks? That stuff doesn't require a lot of effort, doesn't require a lot of money, and we can kind of self-serve. We are quite lucky. We have our own closed, secure GPT functionality and Copilot, like many other people who use Teams. So we can deal with some of that stuff. I think what we'd also say is we've invested quite smartly in bringing experts into the business who are not insurance people but are AI literate, which I am. I can spell it, but I'm still learning about how to apply it. I think that's really helped us avoid some pitfalls. But let's be candid, right? It's also quite expensive. Now, we might have big budgets, and that's the joys of being a big corporate company, but some AI programs, if you really want to do big stuff, is actually really quite expensive. And I think what we've learned, and I did a presentation on it a few weeks ago, is we've learned to break stuff down. Like the big ticket stuff, it's like trying to eat a whale. You've actually got to break it down into what are the tasks that you're trying to focus in on, and what does that look like. But it's being managed pretty proactively. In fact, I've dialed off today from an AI training day for the whole of our DA business. We've taken everyone out of the business to go, right, how do we help with prompting? What are the questions you'd like help with? And doing lots of practical exercises in the business. So yeah, the cost is the day. But actually, we've already had people go, I didn't know you could do that. That's amazing. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. Oh, I can just drop all of these questions into the secure GPT and also drop a bordereau in, and it'll just do it all for me. And that's it. So I still think there's a lot of learning. Tech is going to outpace that learning, but our job, I think, as leaders in any business is to try and keep pace with it as much as we can. Because to your point, Mike, other people will do it quicker, faster if we're not careful, and they'll make better returns than we will. So we've got to keep ourselves honest, right? I think I said on our podcast previously, complacency, I think, for any business in a soft market is a real worry. AI is an area where you've really got to be taking it seriously, and you've really got to have some proper, robust conversations with yourselves about what, if we're not doing it, why are other people doing it, and why,
Yeah.
if they're doing that, why aren't we?
Yeah.
And just look yourselves in the mirror. It's a really important time, I think, right now.
Yeah, very much a FOMO type of scenario, I think, from that.
Yeah.
And Graham, from you, from an MGA perspective, because I know I think you've gone through quite a sort of a digital sort of type overhaul and a strategy across your business, which I believe has been pretty successful. So, what's your sense around, the technology and the AI arms race, as I like to call it?
Well, I would agree completely with what the guys have said so far. I think for a long time, there's been a lot of talk about technology generally, a lot of talk about AI. I think the biggest change we'll see, for the market really over the course of the next few months is that we'll see organizations really begin to accelerate what were plans and really move quite quickly towards implementation at both a quicker pace and at a much greater scale than we've ever seen before. I think the range of solutions available in the market and MGA's ability to access those solutions really has grown exponentially. And I
Yeah.
think as organizations become more familiar, confident with the technology and the benefits it can bring, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. And adoption will I think, only continue to increase. And I think to Gavin's point, that digital lens, digital enablement, almost in our industry now, I think is becoming a hygiene factor. Technology is increased expectations within the industry. We've seen that in our personal lives. All of our clients are seeing that in their personal lives too. And it's our responsibility as industry leaders to make sure that we respond to that. And I think successful organizations, regardless of MGA, broker, insurer, will be the ones that can turn that technology adoption into a competitive advantage to ultimately help them deliver, a more compelling proposition for their partners and clients. And I think I'll just make the point that we talk a lot about technology and AI. Joel's talked about, the training program that the guys have got in AXA today. I think what remains fundamentally important for our industry is that the technology acts really as an enabler for our teams. So it doesn't take away the benefit of underwriter or broker experience, judgment, or human touch, but actually just frees up valuable time for people to crack on with the day jobs and ultimately have better trading conversations with clients, partners.
Yeah, if I
That's
could
a
add to
great
that.
point. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more with that. The enabler, in my view, is absolutely critical. But we are a relationship business, actually, and if technology allows a greater bandwidth for more enriched conversations between all stakeholders, I think that can only be a great thing personally. So I think real interesting debate in terms of that particular theme, and thanks for your insight. So now I'm going to come to the theme which I know all of you have been waiting for, and I've deliberately put it at the end. So I know you're all looking forward to the MJA's flagship conference on the 7th of July at the Business Design Centre, and we're looking forward to seeing you there and your teams. So again, just briefly, I'll come to you first, Joel, if I may. So what do you particularly like about the event, and what are you hoping to take away from it?
So yeah, I think I think it was Graham talked about the Bieber conference recently. I'm super excited about this MGAA conference because I think not only have we got a venue that we can probably feed the amount of people that genuinely want to be in the room talking about MGAs, right? I think that's a really important investment from the MGAA to give us an even bigger place to get together. But the MGA world is everywhere, right? And so for me, this is a really, really important opportunity to come together and also hear about what else is going on. I think sometimes you can get a little bit siloed, and Bieber's great, but it's very broker focused. So to have that total lens, that total focus on the MGA world is a brilliant time invested. I think also what it always reinforces is the community of the MGA world is really strong and growing. And I was going to add actually to one of the things that we're seeing around AI is the collaboration between partners is stronger than ever, I think, because we've all got the same kind of challenges to get together. So I'm really keen to see how do we get into that. Clearly, I'm always there to see our existing partners. I mentioned we partner 28 of them. Always looking for the 29th and 30th. In fact, 2 years ago we signed a binder whilst we were at the MGA conference. So for my team, that's kind of the bar if they're listening. Quite like to sign another binder off whilst we're there. And for Axie, look, we've been platinum sponsor, as you know, Mike. We're super passionate about the MGA role in this industry, and we wouldn't want to be anywhere else on that day, right? Because we want to be seen, we want to be supporting the sector, we want to be seen, frankly, to be supporting the MGAA, because it's not just about the community; it's about making sure that the MGAA industry is fully understood. And I like if I'm honest, on a personal level, I'm quite excited. I mean, I know because I sit on the committee. So I know some of the people who are speaking. We've got some great guests. We're going to get some great insights. So I know that I'll be scribbling away, taking notes that I'll then annoy my team with because I've had loads of ideas on the day, Mike. So I'll send their hate mail to you if you're all right with that. But yeah, no, really looking forward to it on the 7th of July. Yeah, it's going to be good.
And Graham?
Look, Geo are proud to sponsor the conference this year. Can't
you.
wait to be there. And I would say, I shouldn't say this probably, but I will, extra special conference for me because it is my first one.
Well, there you are.
So, hey, really, really, really excited for the day. Looking forward to it. As Joe said, fantastic opportunity to get so many different people from across our sector together in one room. Lots of opportunity to talk about what's keeping people awake, what's working really well with people, see lots of our existing partners, and build new partnerships with people that we don't know. So yeah, really, really looking forward to the day. It's going to be good.
Fantastic. And Gav, if I come to you again, Genesis being our headline sponsor, which is fantastic. So, what do you what do you like about the event, and also, what are you hoping to take away from it for you and your respective teams?
Yeah, well, look, likewise to the other guys, it's great to be in that environment. We work with lots of MGAs, and it is always it's always an exciting place to be. It's where a lot of the the specialists are, the people who really understand their own sectors, and you get lots of insights from that. Obviously, similar to Joe, I'd love to be getting people along to look at demos of our software whilst we're there. That's all part of it. But in terms of obviously, in terms of the conversation, it's fantastic. It's as Joel said about the stage. I don't get along to them enough. I'm hoping to this year because it'll be always so busy just having the conversations. It's hard balance because you're engaged in conversations. You want to go and sit and learn as well. But it's just you've seen it on this call. Like, it's a great place to have conversations, talk about the future. You don't really get that chance in your day to day to step back and just think about stuff and talk about where it's going. You go away from these things, and you might sit in a conference and they're talking about 28 things, and one of those you'll go, "Oh yeah, that's really interesting." And just maybe think about something else in a different way,
Yeah.
and it just
Yeah.
gets it gets your brain going, which is really, really important. And I think, look, before I moved into insurance, people said, "Oh, it's really boring, insurance," and I don't think it is. And maybe that says more about me. I don't know, but it's not at all. I'll die on that hill. It's genuinely interesting. It covers so much that I never sit in these conferences and go, "We've heard it all before." I know I said about we say about legacy tech and cloud technology for years, but it moves, it changes. The conversation changes. There's always emerging things that are going on. So yeah, I think it will be, as I said during the conversation, the industry is now entering that phase of moving really
Yeah.
fast. As Joel said, it'll be interesting to see really how much moved on this year, and then again next year how much that has changed. 'Cause I do think we're in that period now where it's going to be less talk and more action that we'll see. Maybe more talk and more action. We'll stop talking about it, but we'll get action as well.
Absolutely. Okay, well, look, Joel, Graham, Gavin, look, really appreciate your insights across a number of very, very interesting themes, some real good and excellent takeaways from what you've shared. And very thanks for your time today, and look forward to seeing you all on the 7th of July at the Business Design Centre. And I'm sure the conference will be an absolute fantastic success. But again, thanks very much for your time today. All the best. Cheers.
Cheers, Mike.
Thanks,
See you all
Mike.
there.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much for listening. The MGAO welcomes all feedback on all our episodes, so please get in touch. Please get in touch with any suggestions on topics or new guests. And don't forget to subscribe on your chosen platform so you don't miss out on any of our future exciting episodes.